So when we can even be intentional with our breath, it shifts so many things that we're experiencing, both that we're aware of and that we may be not as aware of.
Welcome to Radically Loved Radio. I am your host, Rosie Acosta, yoga teacher and teacher trainer, mindfulness coach, speaker, and creative writer. I am also the founder of radicallylove.com, a website where you can go for more information about yoga, mindfulness, meditation, and lifestyle advice. On this podcast, we talk to people within our health and wellness community that are creating content through the ritualistic practice of yoga, meditation, or overall mindful living. We hope to create value in your life so that you can achieve your highest potential and live a radically loved life. To stay in touch with us, just follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Rosie Acosta and on Facebook at Radically Loved Rosie. You can sign up for our newsletter on radicallylove.com to stay up to date on future workshops, retreats, and latest podcasts. Hey listeners, our skin is the human body's largest organ. And if you're anything like me, then you pay very close attention to anything that goes on it. I was so excited when I heard that Four Sigmatic was coming out with the skincare product line and that it was actually going to be edible, vegan, and cruelty-free. They're introducing their very first mushroom face mask and tonic plus superfood serum. I've been using it now for a month and a half and have noticed such a drastic difference in my skin complexion. This is the first purifying face mask that doubles as an adaptogen tonic and a serum that's also a wellness supplement. So now, treat your skin to the everyday magic of vegan and cruelty-free edible skincare with no fillers, plastics, or chemicals. For more information, go to foursigmatic.com, and if you're interested in trying the product, don't forget to use our promo code RadicallyLoved. Again, go to foursigmatic.com and type the code RadicallyLoved at checkout so that you can get a special discount on all the Four Sigmatic products. And now, back to our show. Okay, here we are. Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to have Felicia in the house. I want to have a little clap track. I say that every time. I know everybody's probably sick. Every episode that you've probably listened to, I say, I feel like I should have a clap track. Still haven't added it, you guys. But I want you to imagine it. So I'm really excited to have you here. We're sitting at my house having some tea and playing with our dogs. So if you hear the little puppies in the background, that's what's going on. They're just having a great time. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here, and I'm a great admirer of you and the way that you're putting your voice out into the world, and which relates to the ways in which we can support each other in the work that we do. So yes. I just want to thank you for being here, and I'm honored.
You know, part of what I really admire about you is how, first of all, the information that you put out, and I've practiced with you on Yoga Glow, and I love everything that you do, and I love the message that you put out on social media all the time. Every time you post something, I know it's going to be something super inspirational, which is awesome. And I want to talk to you about that too, you know, being able to, how you're able to really put something authentic and real just out into the world. And I think that also ties into support and really finding that community, right? For us to be able to cultivate that sameness, I think, you know, that thing that we can really relate to and come together with, which is what yoga is all about, right? So part of what I have found in the last couple of months is that we're definitely in a time where I feel like we need to support each other, like on a deep level, and not just the kind of support where we're just reposting inspirational quotes, right? It's like real connection, feeling support that is really going to help us feel more connected and start looking at the ways that we're more similar rather than the ways that we're different, right?
Well, absolutely. And I think if any of us look at the reasons why we practice yoga or that we're drawn to anything that gives us solutions for what it means to deal with the heartbreak of being human, right? Because that's just part of it. No matter what our path is in life, no matter what our joys are, no matter what our sorrows are, we're going to, at some level, maybe even multiple times a day, experience that heartbreak of being human. Mm-hmm. And what are the tools and the practices and the people and everything that can just soothe our soul. And for me, really early in my yoga practice, I was introduced to Ayurveda. And Ayurveda is a Sanskrit word that most often is translated to mean science of life. And it's a way of looking at health and wellness. And what I thought when I first learned about it, in a way, it's almost the owner's manual for the human body. And there's a teaching in Ayurveda that says that everything has the potential to be medicinal. And if we really think about that, that's such a powerful teaching. It includes our yoga practice, it includes our breathing practices, it includes our meditation, it includes our food, it includes the tea that we drink, the aromatherapy that we use in our lives, the music that we listen to, the media that we consume, and the people that we hang out with. Right? And so there's a long, long list of, if we consider that everything has the potential to be medicinal. And when we apply that, when we really, really apply that to our lives, it shows us all the remedies for resilience that are available to us and everything that can help us to soothe the heartbreak of being human. And it feels, especially in the world we live in today, where all of that feels so immediate, whether it's watching the news or just everything that comes across our news feed or just stepping outside, everything that we are faced with and cope with and have to navigate. And this is why we often seek out the practices of yoga. But according to Ayurveda, our practice of yoga isn't just yoga, it's everything, because it's everything has the potential to be medicinal.
Yeah.
And not just the kind of medicine we need a prescription to take, but the kind of medicine that helps us to, like I said, navigate our lives, or helps us to find healing and health and wellness, and gives us, those remedies for building our own strength.
Yeah. And I think that's so beautifully stated. And I think that says a lot to the point of our imbalances, mm-hmm. right? To be able to utilize a science like Ayurveda to assess kind of where we are, what we're missing, where we're out of balance. So with your experience, your expertise, and the state that we're in, talking about support and all these different things that we absolutely need in our life. What do you think is the biggest imbalance that we're suffering from at the moment?
Well, going back to Ayurveda for a second, because Ayurveda really looks at the core of our health and wellness relates to how well we're digesting, right? And digestion is something that...
I go,
I know, right? And digestion is something that happens, when we think about digesting our food, digesting the tea that we're drinking, digesting anything. But really digestion is, how we're processing at every level, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So there is discussion of the digestion that occurs in our mind, right? Our mental digestion. And I think probably... we keep saying in the world we live in today, but really it's the world we live in no matter what today it is, right? That we could just substitute the list of challenges for whatever year we want to put in, right? It's not like the world we live in today has the, monopoly on challenge.
Right.
It's just what's the variety of it. And so in some ways, I think, and I just thought about this with you asking the question, but in some ways, our greatest illness is indigestion, right? And indigestion, like physical indigestion, mental indigestion, emotional indigestion, psychological, spiritual, all of the above. So that indigestion on so many levels. And we're constantly taking things in, right? The food, the sensory impressions, media, right? Instagram posts, movies, all of it is stuff that we're taking in. And so really it comes down to how well are we digesting? How well are we processing? And how are we actually digesting and processing and assimilating and breaking things down and experiencing them and being able to integrate them, like physically, but also on all the subtle levels as well. And this is, in many ways, all of the practices of yoga are practices that help cultivate, strengthen, enhance our digestion.
Yeah.
And, that from the digestion of our cells to the digestion of our souls, right?
Wow.
And everything that we take in. So, yeah, in some ways, I think it all could come down to some kind of indigestion.
Oh my God. What do we do? Is there like a cleanse we can do? How do we purge that indigestion? What would be what do you think is going to help our lack of assimilation?
Well, I think there's this thing, we want the cleanse,
Yeah,
right?
see?
Like I want the 7-day
Instant.
plan. I want the reboot. I want the detox tea, right? I want to just tell me what to eat or tell me what to watch or tell me what to do. And then it'll all be fixed. And the rest of my life is going to be perfect.
Right.
Right? And that's a thing, but, right? Or we want like the self-care practice, right? Like give me the self-care practice.
Right.
Tell me the practice,
Yes.
right? And really it comes down to this, because then here's the thing with whether it's the 7-day reboot program
Right.
or the daily self-care practice, is then we're like, well, I don't have time for that, right? Whatever it is, I don't have time for that.
I can't do it.
I can't do it. Or the shopping list is too long.
Right.
I have kids. I have a job. Don't you understand that I have to do this? Right. I have no time for this.
Right.
But really, if we look at like the teachings and the practices of Yoga and Ayurveda, it's not really about the thing that we add to our day or the perfect self-care practice or the ultimate detox or the 7-day program to the better life. It's about how do we integrate practices into our day and into the flow of the ritual of our routine that actually help enhance our digestion. So one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is self-care is not an add-on, right? And the detox is not the destination. It's what are we integrating into our day? Because ultimately we need to do some level of detox every day, right? Even if it's just a little bit, right? Because if you only, like, let's say you only took out your trash in your kitchen once a year.
Oh.
Right? Like that's your yearly detox. Well, it doesn't really work that way. There's the little things that we do every day. I mean, even each and every breath is an opportunity to detox. Like we're exhaling with every breath. Every rhythm includes an exhalation.
Yeah, I've never thought about that. Like taking the garbage out once a year. It's always that thing where, at the beginning of the year, I'll do a social media detox. I'm going to do all the detoxes for this short amount of time. And then the rest of the year, we're just putting stuff in that we can't really fully assimilate.
Right, and I think it's about how are we doing something to enhance our digestion every day. So we could think about it like drinking hot water with lemon in the morning. We could think about it like having a cup of warm tea. We can think about it of being really intentional with a relaxation, a shavasana, a meditation practice. Because according to the teachings of yoga, meditation is everything that meditation is, but it's also a practice of digestion. It gives us that moment of mental digestion to have those experiences or quiet, right? Even sleep is a practice of digestion. So sometimes bringing in that intentionality to it, right? Because ultimately we are doing things throughout the day. We're taking showers or washing our hair or doing something, but we may not be doing it with our full attention. And if we bring more attention to whether it's our practices of digestion or detoxification or assimilation, that can amplify them, right? Attention is an amplifier.
Yeah.
And even with social media, are we just scrolling all day, or do we engage with it the way we would engage like with a meal, right? Where you're savoring it and you're connecting with the people you want to connect with. Like sometimes I'll look for specific people. Oh, I haven't heard from, my high school friend so-and-so in a while. Let me just check in or touch base, right? So to even think about it, instead of just all day snacking, right? Or instead of eating without thinking, am I using my social media like I would eat dinner? Like, what do I want to eat? Who do I want to connect with? What am I tasting?
Yeah.
What's the experience that I'm coming away with? Who am I leaving notes for? Who am I checking in with? Right? Instead of like random.
Yeah.
And then that can
Mindless.
build up random, mindless indigestion. Oh, I have a second at a stoplight, so I'm going to scroll through.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm so guilty of all of that, And can you speak to the utilizing the breath for detoxification a little bit more? Because I love that, and I feel like people don't think about that so much, that, we're shallow breathers a lot of the time,
Well, and breath is such an interesting thing, right? Because we're breathing all the time. We just are. We're breathing all the time. And we don't have to think to breathe, which is a great gift, because if we had to think for every breath, then when would we be checking our, Instagram? Because it would take up a lot of bandwidth, right? Like animals, like dolphins and whales have to think to breathe, but they're only breathing once every 5 to 20 minutes.
What? I didn't know that.
Right, because they're in the water, right?
Right.
So you think about, I used to be a docent or a guide for like whale watching boats, right?
Oh my God, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
So you think about like a whale, right?
Okay.
A whale lives under the water, like eats things under the water, swims under the water, but they breathe air. So they have to actually make a decision to go to the surface, to breathe. It's a thought, right? Apparently. I mean, I haven't really had a conversation with a whale about this. So maybe I'm assuming a few things, but it is they make a conscious choice.
Right.
To go to the surface and breathe. For us, we're breathing all the time. We could be driving and breathing. We can be talking and breathing. We can be eating and breathing. It's like magic. Right?
Yeah,
it's amazing,
bizarre. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like we're breathing. We don't have to think to breathe. And in fact, if something happens to us, our breathing just happens. We're asleep, we breathe. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a whole thing too with whales that like one side of their brain will go to sleep and the other side will stay awake because they still have to breathe.
Wow.
Not that often, but like every 20 minutes or so.
That is bizarre.
Right?
Yeah.
So anyway, we don't have to think to breathe, which is great because it gives us lots of time to do other things. But our breath is so intimately connected to our whole embodied state of being, which is why so much in yoga focuses on the breath, right? Because our breath is intimately connected to the workings of our nervous system, our emotional state, our states of mind. Our breath is a connecting point between, the workings of our physiology, our body. The breath is a connecting point between our subtle body and our physical body. So when we can even be intentional with our breath, it shifts so many things that we're experiencing, both that we're aware of and that we may be not as aware of. So every time you inhale, you're taking things in, as much as you are taking things in when you eat or when you watch TV or watch a movie or watch a video. You're taking something in. And that pause after the inhalation is that pause of digesting. And then exhaling, when we exhale, we're letting things go, right?
Yeah.
We're releasing our metabolic waste.
Yeah.
Right? And we can physically let go. Like on our exhale, our heart rate even slows down a little bit as we exhale.
Yeah.
So there's these really interesting things of that point of connection. And again, it's why in the teachings of yoga there's so much focus on the breath, because we always have the breath with us. Right? We don't need any special props.
Right.
We don't need any special clothes. We don't need a yoga mat. Everything is just right there with the immediacy of the breath. So it's such an amazing tool too. Even thinking about driving, we can be aware of our breath as we drive. We can be aware of our breath in so many situations. And it's why it's also an entry point for meditation and focusing our thoughts, our attention through the breath. When I was in nursing school, I used to use a lot of meditation techniques that focused on the breath when I was working in a hospital, but also even taking exams, right? That sense of slowing down, focusing, bringing my attention and awareness, not rushing through things. So it's also something that helps enhance our ability to be present or focused or digest information and let things go. So our breath is a way, moment by moment practice of drawing in whatever is medicinal, digesting, assimilating, integrating, and then letting go whatever we don't need, detoxifying, releasing, eliminating. And there's that pattern that happens all day, every day. Drawing in, integrating, releasing.
Yeah.
Taking things in, assimilating, detoxifying. So that's an everyday practice. And we get stuck sometimes in, okay, I have to take everything in, right? I have to binge watch something, right? And I'm all for binge watching, right? Like, I think it's fun. Well, I love movies.
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
I ditto. The same. Yes.
I love it, right? But then it's like, okay, how am I integrating, digesting, processing, having a little bit of a pause or some quiet, and then letting go whatever I need to let go of, right?
I mean, I think that this is such a simple thing, right? And it also obviously relates to the rest and digest ability of our own mechanism to be able to be in a place of homeostasis so that we can let those things go, right? To be able to...
Right, but even in the homeostasis and the rest and digest part of it, it's a fluid thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think of rest and digest as like
static.
static.
Yeah.
But think about, so the breath, but think about the heartbeat, right? So our heart, which is also beating all the time, contracts and relaxes, and contracts and relaxes, and contracts and relaxes again and again and again and again from our first breath to our last. And the contraction is important and the relaxation is important. So, and they're both necessary, and it's fluid, right? It's a heartbeat. It's a continuous process. It's a rhythm. It's a rhythmic process. We talk about heartbeat as having a rhythm. So that's something we can tune into too, because sometimes we get focused on action, which is the contraction, or doing nothing, which is the relaxation, but really it's the fluid between the two.
Yeah.
Right? And we need activity, we need rest. We need activity, we need rest.
Yeah.
And we need it every day. We are awake, we are asleep. We want our waking time to be really awake, and we want our sleeping time to be really asleep. And what happens sometimes too, and I think this is where it gets into the illness of indigestion, it gets into our sense of exhaustion, it gets into everything else, is that sometimes we're not fully active and sometimes we're not fully sleeping. Right? Like, oh, I can't really sleep. I need to stay up and work on this, or I'll be half asleep, or I'll sleep with my lights on, or I'll fall asleep watching something, right? So then you're watching something and sleeping, so then you have the lights and the sound and everything else, rather than just fully sleeping.
Yeah. Oh my God. You said so many things. I'm like, I have so many questions. I put pins in all these things that you said. I'm like, okay, so how do we know? Because all I'm doing is analyzing my schedule or the way that I work. It's usually I take I work all year, and I usually take December off, or I try to take December off, and I've done it for the last 2 years, and it's just like it's not enough. I always am so exhausted, and I feel like I didn't get enough rest, and that makes sense because I'm going all year, like without keeping the balance of, rest a little bit every day. It's like, no, I'll wait till December. And then December comes around, and then it's just like, I can't rest because I'm just like, it's like I have shell shock from the entire year being busy, all year.
Right, and it's like you're not giving yourself that wind down point.
Yeah.
Because there's also something, and I've experienced it, and I've seen it in other people, where we have an adrenaline hangover, right? And that adrenaline hangover can be from, I practically have a caffeine IV, so, right? But those moments when you realize that you've had a little too much caffeine, right? Like, even for me, it takes me a lot to get to that point, but sometimes it happens, and then I'm like, I didn't really need that cup of fill in the blank, right? Or those things, and I've had this too. I produce a magazine, and with LA Yoga Magazine, we have those moments where we have to send something to the printer, and we have a schedule, and there's a time, and it all has to be sent at a certain time. So I've definitely had moments where I'm in that heightened state, or I've been up for like 21 hours straight or longer or whatever, and then the day after, there's the adrenaline hangover.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you don't even need drugs to have or alcohol to have the hangover, because you're building up to that point of intensity. Yeah. And it can happen even from great things, right? You're having something great is happening, or whatever's going on in your life, and there's a lead up to this thing. And then afterwards, you have to recover from the hangover.
Yeah.
So that's where this flow, and I've definitely had times where I've had the adrenaline hangover because you have to push through for whatever it is, right? Or there's plenty of examples in life where you have to kind of push past whatever your normal cycle is, or whatever your normal limits are. And so you do that knowing that you have to give yourself something extra, right? You're going to have to give yourself something extra afterwards to compensate. That's also part of self-care, right?
Yeah.
If you're asking more of yourself, you have to give more to yourself in order to bounce back appropriately.
Right.
So there is that those hangover moments, and when you're in that, you just know, okay, that's what I'm in. But then you look at, okay, what are the things that I can do to just strengthen that resilience, digestion, rest. And again, one of the things I think about in terms of sleeping is, what can I do to give myself the best quality sleep I can, right? Whether it's turning off the lights, which is something I struggle with. I feel like, I should stay up later, or I should do this, or I should have this light on, or I should read this book, right? No, it's like, okay, I have this whole conversation with myself at night. Okay, Felicia, you have to turn off the lights, right? You have to turn off the screens, right? You do sleep better. Like, I sleep better with heavier blankets on me, or even an eye pillow.
Yes.
And if I can get that better sleep, then the next morning goes better.
Right.
Right? And then you've actually put yourself in that recovery and reset mode, so that you actually have a better action afterwards. Like, the better the relaxation, the better the contraction.
Yeah.
Right? The better the exhalation, the better the inhalation. So it's, all right, if you can make sleep count, make that time count. Make it matter. So that way when you're awake, you have that much more, whatever the zhuzh is. The zhuzh, the mojo, the
prana,
the energy, the feeling alive, the vitality,
enthusiasm.
the enthusiasm, right?
Yeah.
Then you have like more personal likes.
Yeah.
So I think it's great too, knowing that, okay, here's the cycle of my year, but 11 month and then December, that's a lot to kind of set yourself up for.
And
in
it's
terms
not even
of
the whole month. It's like 3 weeks, really.
Yeah. And probably like 2.5 of those weeks you're dealing with the adrenaline hangover.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? And then you get to like the last couple days.
And then it's like, I feel like I've not rested at all.
Right. Because you had to like deal with the hangover part of it.
Right.
Right? Every so often I'm trying to remember when it happened to me recently, but every so often I'll like end up in a situation where I'm actually hungover. And then I'm like, what did I do? I'm like, oh, I had that extra glass of, like, oh, that's what that feels like, right? And so you've gone below like your set point. So then you have to work harder to get back up.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Right. And that's where it's the drinking extra water, the getting extra sleep, the extra B vitamins, right? The ways in which you've kind of, stripped your body.
Yeah.
You have to give it back.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I'm like just, my mind is getting blown right now because this is all stuff too that we, or people in the health and wellness world, these are all things that we know, right? It's all the knowledge, it's the things that we know that, oh yeah, of course I feel better when I get sleep. Of course I feel better when I turn everything off and I'm able to fall asleep when my body wants to fall asleep and wake up early and do all the things. But for some reason, it's just,
Well, we think that somehow, like, knowing about health is like a superpower that, like, we can get away with things, right? Like, because I know these things, I could stay up for 24 hours straight and everything's going to be okay. Well, no. No, that's why I have these conversations with myself at night. Like, Felicia, you sleep better when you turn off the lights. Like, it seems like a simple thing. And then you have to remember that, again, because there's this knowing about health, you think it's a superpower. Right? And you think that somehow then you become immune from everything, right? Like, knowing means that I don't actually have to do it.
Yeah.
Right? I know it. I know it.
So I don't have to
I know it.
Yeah.
Right? And then it's like, well, no, you actually do have to turn off the lights. And again, that seems like a really simple thing, but I feel in myself, like the nights that I fall asleep with the lights on or I forget to do it, I do not sleep as well as the nights when I've actually turned off the lights. It seems like such a small thing, but that's what self-care is. It is these small things. It's not the 7-day detox in Costa Rica, right? It's are you turning off the lights every day? And it's also, the thing is, we have to remember that just because you did it yesterday doesn't give you like a free pass for today. It's like brushing your teeth, right? Like I brushed my teeth today and I plan to do it again because the fact that I brushed my teeth last week doesn't really help me today. I mean, it does, right? Like there's good things that happen, and there are good things that happen from like the accumulation of self-care, right? But just the accumulation of self-care doesn't get you off the hook. Right?
Yeah, that's so good. Such a great analogy, such a great metaphor. You're absolutely right. It's the whole going back to the whole taking out the garbage once a year. Like it just doesn't work.
No, like I have to do it again.
Yeah.
Right? Or the compost or the recycling or whatever, right? Like I have to actually do it again.
Yeah.
And that's also a trap that we fall into, right? Like, I have so many hours of self-care, right? Or I have so many hours of yoga practice, or I have so many hours of meditation. Yes, that's great. And that has like the power of accumulation. Mm-hmm. But it goes back to like the breath or the heartbeat. You're going to do it again.
Yeah.
You're going to breathe again. Your heart is going to beat again. You have to rest again.
Yes.
Like, you don't get to like bundle up your sleep.
Right, and use it as a credit.
Right.
For like today.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
No.
Like maybe it works that way like when you pay your rent, but it like, okay, I'm going to build up this credit and pay this bill, and if I pay extra. But it doesn't work that way for things like sleep or self-care, which are very cyclical.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like the way we live our life is really
Yeah,
cyclical.
I love that. And that's a great tie-in to something else I wanted to talk to you about with regard to being able to cultivate a supportive community. Hello, listeners. As many of you know, I am a yoga teacher, which means I like to wear a lot of stretchy pants and things that are comfy and actually look good and that fit my curves right. And so, when we shop for things that we like to wear out, for me, I like to look for two things. Number one, affordability, and number two, it has to be of good quality. So I'm not sure about you guys, but when I slip into a comfy pair of yoga pants or a nice top, I want to actually feel like it fits my body, and I don't want it to feel like I'm sausaging myself into something. I know that's a little bit TMI, but it happens sometimes. With that being said, I'm super excited to partner with a company founded by the beautiful Kate Hudson. Fabletics is a fashion-focused activewear brand with the mission to empower women by making a healthy, active lifestyle accessible to everyone because of their exceptional price point. No matter if you're ready to zen out in a yoga class or go to a spin class or take a stroll in the park, Fabletics has you covered and carries gym wear suitable for any type of workout. Fabletics is your one-stop shop for affordability gym wear, and all of their designs are created in-house. Trust me, you seriously can't find these pieces anywhere else. So before I forget, Fabletics is offering all of you an incredible deal, so you don't want to miss the get 2 leggings for $24 at $99 value when you sign up for a VIP. So all you have to do is go to fabletics.com/Rosie, ROSIE, to take advantage of this deal now. So that's fabletics.com/Rosie to get 2 leggings for $24 and also free shipping in orders over $49. International shipping is available, and there's absolutely no commitment when you purchase your first order. So go to fabletics.com/Rosie, or you can go to the show notes for this episode and click the link directly. And now back to our show. Right, because I think that everything that you're talking about is implicit of having to do something daily or having to build something for a long period of time. And I think that being able to do that in a place or in an environment where you feel the love and support of the community or the people around you is super helpful. It makes it maybe a little bit more sustainable. Every time that you're reaching out, whether it be with LA Yoga Magazine or through your posts or the work that you put out, it's there's always the heart of being able to cultivate something that people can use for sustainability for a long term. It's not just like, oh, here's a quick fix. Like, this is it. I mean, you're even talking about in your own practice how you have to have these conversations with yourself at night, right? This is like, it's a long-term thing, right? And so I guess my question is, how has building a community helped that with you, or how have you seen it help your community cultivating a space or ideas that can support everybody else's opinions or like-mindedness to, create a sustainable community, or, just like I don't know, I think I asked you like 3 different questions in that.
Well, we'll start with this, that one of the cornerstones of the teachings of yoga has to do with community. And I think it's one of the reasons why we love going to take yoga classes. And I mean, I teach on an online site, right? Like Yoga Glow or Glow offers classes online that you can take anywhere. And there's community aspects to that where you can share and check in and write comments and notes and everything, or practice with other people. And it's funny because even my sister and I have had times where we've been traveling and we'll practice together using Yoga Glow and practice, we usually take other people's classes and not mine, which is fine. But one of the things in terms of yoga practice, and I would say like yoga practice has definitely been the longest relationship I've had in my life, right? That relationship with practice is a long-term relationship. And how to cultivate that long-term relationship and finding community or finding like my people has been an important part of that. And one of the things I like to think about is cultivating instances of positive peer pressure. And the way I use it is this, and over the years I've had people that I've practiced with, like practice partners, and sometimes we'll get together and practice in somebody's living room. Sometimes we'll go to class together. Sometimes we'll just check in with each other. And that sense of, how am I staying committed and connected to my practice and doing it through finding people. And sometimes I'll meet friends in classes. I've definitely had amazing friendships that I've cultivated over the years with people that I've met in yoga class or met through yoga in some way. Or I'll have friends in other ways and we'll go to class together. Like I've become friends with one of my neighbors and it's really fun because we'll go to class together. Last week we found a breathwork class that we went to together. And just that sense of how do we support each other through practice. And I think that can be done physically, and I think it also can be done remotely, right? There's people that we connect with in all the various arenas of online or social media or anything else, and it's looking for the ways in which we can encourage each other. So for me, I definitely think about how to use kind of all forms of connection to help support each other, or how to use all forms of connection to find that means of support. So it goes back to everything being medicinal, that even our relationships, how are our relationships medicine and not poison?
Yeah.
Because according to the teachings of Ayurveda, everything is potentially medicinal, but the flip side of that is also true. And we know that sometimes that we can be in relationships that can be toxic. So how do we use discernment to, how do we make judgment calls, right? And sometimes we look at making those kinds of decisions, and in a way that too is a kind of digestion and detoxification. So how do we navigate that? And I think that's also a daily practice. And I think about choosing relationships that are supportive, and it's not from a Pollyanna-ish perspective. Like I've definitely gone head to head with some of my friends and had challenging times, and you figure out ways to navigate that and to know that, okay, if my highest value is support and connection and strength and compassion, sometimes it's a bumpy road.
Yeah.
And being willing to be on that bumpy road with those goals of support, compassion, collaboration, uplifting each other, and then being there for hard times too.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think that one of the biggest things that I feel like when we've talked about that in the past, and not in an articulate way like you just put it, I think just more broad strokes with regard to how to identify when a relationship is toxic or it's actually feeding you, especially when we haven't sharpened our discernment tool, because we just haven't had the practice, right? So then we may think that those moments of having a disagreement are all of a sudden now this person's toxic. It's like, how do you discern whether it's time to navigate an issue with somebody that you love, somebody that you care about, or it's actually not serving your highest good?
Right, and I think that's the kind of thing, and I joke sometimes, but I'm also serious when I say I'm going to meditate on it. Right, and that's like a legit answer I give to things. And people who know me, like, I don't know if they think I'm just being facetious or like crunchy granola or anything, but it's like, no, that's a legit answer for me. And sometimes I'll just think on, or just meditate on it. And I think there's a danger sometimes in making a snap judgment in, okay, this situation has now become toxic. I'm not meaning to like call out one of my friends, but she said something to me, like there was a moment where we had a disagreement and I had to give myself some space. And when we kind of talked about it, she's like, "You've had me in the penalty box." And I'm like, "Oh, that's," and I'm like, "Well, that's an interesting way to look at it, right?" And then I was talking to somebody else about it, and she was saying, we were talking about somebody being in the penalty box. And that sounds so like you're punishing somebody. But I think there's also a sense of the space that we give ourselves around something, that the practice of discernment is a practice of contemplating or meditating on something. And we don't have to make a snap judgment about it. That and even in people, it's okay to put ourselves in the penalty box. Right? Like in a way, the penalty box is how we give ourselves some space.
Yeah.
Right? Like how can we give ourselves space from a situation to have clarity on it? Because in the teachings of Ayurveda, well, what makes something medicinal or toxic? Sometimes it's the dosage.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
And the dosage of a person too, right? Like even ourselves, sometimes we have to navigate that a little bit. Like sometimes a small amount of something and then taking a break from it is actually okay. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, oh, now this person and our relationship have become toxic. It's like, oh no, we've entered some territory that we might have to navigate differently. So it's okay to take space or to give space. And that's also part of digestion.
Yeah.
And then to see, well, what happens from there? Can something be resolved?
Yeah.
Or are there certain patterns that are repeated? Or is somebody making comments that are negative, or are there ways to uplift? I think it's not a cut and dry sort of answer, right?
Yeah.
And the practices of discernment are the practices of, I think, taking time.
Yeah.
And evaluating and questioning. And that, in a way, is that practice of kind of discernment or anything else. So sometimes when I say I'm going to meditate on it, I mean it, right? Like I do mean it, like not sometimes, all the time.
Yeah, no, it's so great. It's
so great.
It's so true, too.
Because sometimes we think like meditating means like, I'm going to like blank out the slate and enter a state of complete enlightenment, and I'm not going to think about anything. And that's not really what meditation is. Sometimes meditation can be that we take a question and contemplate on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Go on an internal quest.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I love that. I want to be respectful of your time, so I only have a couple of questions. What has been, for you personally, your biggest intention with all the work that you've put out in the world, with magazine, with your teaching, with your studies, with just you as a teacher? What is the biggest intention behind the work that you do?
Well, I think for me, there's a few kind of guiding principles for me that are really important that I've come to realize. And one is kindness. And I think that the practice of cultivating kindness and compassion. So it's at the core for me of what I do. And maybe it's because it's something that I feel like I need to give to myself and to put out in the world. That sense of, sharing more kindness, creating kindness for myself, being compassionate toward myself and toward others. And whether it's through teaching or writing, and for me, all of it's the same, whether it's in LA Yoga magazine, whether it's in a class that I'm teaching, whether it's in a social media post, it's all the same in terms of cultivating greater compassion and kindness. And I think it's what we need and it's what matters, because there's a lot of things that have other intentions, right?
That's very diplomatic of you.
Yes. And sometimes people make a sport out of tearing other people apart.
Yeah.
And I think that there are other ways to communicate.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. What is freedom?
I think one aspect of freedom has to do with cultivating a sense of ease, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that freedom is also a sense of feeling that there are always options, feeling that then in many ways, I think one of my favorite of the Yoga Sutras is is Sthira Sukha Asanam, which, you know, there's many translations of that sutra, but Sthira, my favorite translation is steadiness, and Sukha, my favorite translation is sweetness or ease. So how can we, in every aspect of our life, you know, every pose that we take, every movement, everything that we navigate throughout the day, how can we cultivate greater steadiness and greater sweetness and ease? And I think that's really what freedom is can we be steady? Can we be full of ease? Can we find sweetness? And can we actually inhabit that and uplift other people with those values, right? Of steadiness and of ease and of sweetness.
Yeah.
Right, and I can understand that it's an easy thing to say, right? Because there's a lot of layers to what freedom is. But I think from the personal to the political, it's a sense of steadiness, sweetness, ease, having that ourselves and cultivating that in our relationships with each other.
What is love?
I think at the heart of love is acceptance, right? And that's acceptance for ourselves, for who we are, and acceptance of the other people and beings and life forms around us for who they are, right? That real love, and again, there's so many layers to it, relates to acceptance. And acceptance doesn't necessarily mean that we're being complacent. It also relates to giving the space, the steadiness, the ease for, you know, allowing people and, you know, other beings to be their best self.
Yeah, I love that. What advice would this Felicia give to Felicia teen?
Oh my goodness, right? I think definitely that self-compassion, self-acceptance, self-love, and discernment. But, you know, those things, I think maybe I'll just speak for myself. You know, I spend my whole life, you know, wanting to be the good teacher to my teenage self, right? Or that, you know, I spend my whole life like learning the lessons that I struggled to learn as a teenager.
Right.
And I started practicing yoga when I was a teenager. So I think there was that real desire for the answers that didn't seem to be available from any other place that I could find. Because I think for me, the practice of yoga helped to have a means by which to navigate those questions of how to find, how to experience, self-love, self-acceptance, ease. What does it mean to feel a sense of ease in one's own body, and sweetness and steadiness?
So good. What would your 95-year-old self tell you now?
Oh, like, you will never be this young again. So, like, run around naked as often as possible. And it's okay to drink coffee and eat full-fat yogurt.
Oh, yeah, I love full-fat yogurt. That's the kind I get. I love it so
Right?
much.
And, like, whipped cream.
Yeah, no,
Right?
I love that. That's really good. So I only have one more question to ask, if that's okay. And it's pertaining to this particular podcast and why I started it. So I started Radically Loved as a way to, bring like-minded people together to create a community and to support each other. It's about connecting the entire tapestry that is just our sameness, our humanity, and we're all radically loved by God, Source, Universe, Baby Buddha, Baby Krishna, whatever higher power of your understanding. The universe works for us and not against us. And we're all radically loved. And so the question to you, it's two-part. The first one is, how do you feel radically loved? And what do you radically love?
So I think there are so many moments in our life where we're taught lessons about love, and I think love is a practice. So it's those, love is definitely a practice. And I know people talk about this a lot, and I didn't really understand it until I had a dog, right? Like, I've not been a lifelong dog person. I did not really understand this whole dog thing or living with dogs. Like, I didn't grow up with dogs, anything like that. So living with a dog has been an experience that has given me a lot of lessons about radical love. Not that I haven't learned these lessons from people, because I have, right? And I'm not diminishing the many people in my life, but it's been different, because I think the thing for me, my experience, and really think about radical love, is that dogs don't talk, right? They do bark, and they do, like, make their wishes known, but there's no, like, running commentary, right? Like, you live with a partner and there's, like, a running commentary, right?
Yeah.
Right? Or even, like, parents or kids or other family members. There's a whole, like, discussion component to things. Whereas dogs, they don't, there's a whole, like, they definitely have preferences and they say things, but it's different. And so this nonverbal love piece, and to walk into a room and have a little animal, like, jump up and down and do exciting things. Not that it's always just about, like, okay, I want somebody to jump up and down when I walk in the room,
Right.
and that's the criteria for my relationships.
I hope everybody's taking notes. So,
right? But it's more just, there's this sense of, like, this whole energy, because I think that there's an aspect of either feeling or experiencing love that has to do with deep, deep acceptance. And it doesn't mean that you have to like everything or anything else, but that there's a deep acceptance of who you are. So I think that there's really feeling loved is also feeling accepted, and it at a deep, deep, deep root level. And so I think whether it's, self-acceptance or feeling that with another person or feeling that with an animal, that there's a relationship between radical love and acceptance that I think is really profound.
Yeah, I love that.
And I've experienced it with people too, so it's not just little fluffy for animals. I guess I answered them both together, huh?
Yeah.
Like, what do I radically love? Because some people, you know, and I don't have children, so some people talk about like feeling radical love is, you know, their children, or what do they radically love? And I think for me, if I had to make a list of what I radically love, it would be a very long list, and it wouldn't necessarily be exclusive. And I mean, for me too, I'm a very deeply spiritual / religious person. So there is a lot of, you know, God, higher power in that for me that then trickles down to everything else or encompasses everything else, right? Whether it's my deep radical love of the planet and everything on it, and you know, my own appreciation, gratitude for my own life and my family. You know, it's the kind of thing that if I really look at how to answer that, it's not just one thing. Like, what do I radically love? Like, where do I begin and end? Like, we could sit here for the rest of my conscious and unconscious breaths to answer that question. And I think that one of the greatest gifts that we can experience is to feel that radical love many times in our life.
Yeah.
And many times in our day. It doesn't have to be a peak moment sort of answer.
Yeah. I love that. I love that, no pun intended. Well, I do want to thank you for being here. This has been such a great conversation, and I just want to take a moment to thank you for obviously coming over and hanging out, but for sharing your wisdom and your love and your teachings, and everything that you do has provided so much value in the world. And I can speak for myself as well, just being a student of yours on Yoga Glow or on Glow. It's been such a pleasure and joy to be a part of your atmosphere, and I'm really grateful to have you on here. So thank you for this. And so for everybody listening, if they want to reach out to you, they want to get to know more about you and what you do, where can we send them?
So, you know, on Glow or glow.com, I think it's like 160 classes or something like that. I have a lot. There's a lot. I have a lot of classes, and many of them focus on different aspects of self-care and internal compassion and kindness, because for me it's something that's so important, and it's kind of the thing that I wanted to teach my teenage self, so it's the thing that I will probably spend the rest of my life focused on. I also am the editor-in-chief at LA Yoga Magazine, so layoga.com, which we write about a lot of different people, places, and things, and try to share inspiring stories about making practice part of everyday life. And then my website, FeliciaTomasko.com, and which just shares information about my teaching and my private practice and my work on LA Yoga and everywhere else. And I do teach. I do teach at retreats and festivals and conferences, and we'll be leading a retreat later this fall with a dear friend of mine to Costa Rica. And
yeah, that's awesome. And are you on social media?
I am on social media. I love social media. It's so fun, and and I love it, and I think it's fun. It's like, you know, dessert, right? You know, so I that's how I treat it. I treat it like dessert. And being somebody who has been trained as a writer, like I was trained as a writer and I've written my whole life, so it's just an outlet for that. So my name, Felicia Tomasko, I'm on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and I like to share whipped cream inspired desserty kind of things. And things that focus on love and self-care and practice, and what does it really mean to live in the world and live in the world with kindness, compassion, self-care, and love.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. So for those of you that are listening, if you go to the show notes, all of those links that Felicia just mentioned will be on there. Be sure to share this episode with someone who you think will benefit from it. And if you liked it, please share it on Instagram, and don't forget to tag us both on there. And that will wrap our episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you to the puppies.
Thanks to the puppies, and thank all of you listeners. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I am so excited to continue to do this. Please share this with your friends. Email us, message us on Instagram at Rosie Acosta or on Twitter at Rosie Acosta. Subscribe on iTunes, write a review. We love doing this, so please help us continue to keep this podcast going. Thanks for listening. Is there something missing in your life? Is there something that you want to do in the world to create an impact but feel that it's overwhelming? So many of us walk through life feeling unsatisfied, overwhelmed, tired, and desperate for a deeper connection, but don't quite know how to achieve the things that we want in life. Join us this spring at the Dunsky Castle in Scotland for 7 days of yoga, meditation, and yoga nidra, all focusing on finding your life's purpose. During our time together, we will learn how and when to take action, how to lead from our heart and not our head, how to break up with our inner critic for good, and dive deep into learning about desire and discipline and how this creates a purposeful life. For more information, go to radicallyloved.com, or you can message us at info@radicallyloved.com, subject Scotland. We'll see you soon.